I want to welcome everybody here today. I think most of you know this man without much introduction. He's our House District 12 Representative, Rick Jasperse, and with no further ado, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thanks for all being here today. It's been a busy day. Who was making the comment that you're on vacation for how many months? 9 months?
That's king.
This is one of these weeks, you'd think that, but this week alone, before Sunday morning, I'll go to 9 different meetings. And I can speak at 5 of them. And so you would think that, but I guess a lot of people want to see you and want to hear what you have to say or ask you a lot of questions. I was a big canoe this morning. It was real neat. They have a leadership group where they had all the elected officials from Dawson and Pickens County, and also myself and Steve Gooch. And it was real fun to listen to our guys from Pickens County talk and just tell about what a good job they've done. Our sheriff, commissioners, and the school board chairman. It was just kind of neat to do that. And I'll just kind of ramble around. Here's what I've got. I gave you 20 bills, I think were the top ones this past year. And I'll kind of jump through them pretty quick. Some of them will take a little more time than others. I want, of course, leave plenty of time for just questions. Or we'll just go the other way, just do questions and ideas that you might have. But I thought people kind of want us to know what we did. So I've got just the highlights, and it's the top 20 of the things. And it starts off, and please, it's very informal. I did this last year. The night after what we call a sine die. The next morning I was here. We got home about 3 o'clock in the morning, so we were here. So I'm going to scramble around. This is day 40 in the Georgia General Assembly. All these bills are stuff that we looked at, voted on, or declined on day 40. The mystique about this thing is that people think, you've never seen this stuff before. But we really have. Most of these bills we have voted on previously in the past 40 days or 39 days. These are ones that are coming back from the Senate with minor changes, or ones that have sometimes major changes. And a major change will be one like this. And they'll have a conference committee. And how it works down there is we have committees who take a subject, a bill, they work on it, try to perfect it, comes to the House floor, we work on it again if we can, either accept it or deny it. Then it goes to the Senate. It goes to their Senate committee, and they'll do the same thing. And so, but if we disagree, because the Senate and the House, totally different kind of groups of people, and if they disagree, they come back together into what's called a conference committee, and they've got to work it out. And so these conference committees are appointed by the Speaker in the House, Lieutenant Governor, over in the Senate, 3 people each. They've all got to agree. And it gets tough. The more contentious the subject matter, the tougher these things are. And there were some pretty exciting ones, especially mental theft, which was we had 2 very different ideas about that and how we should go about it this year, but they got it worked out. And so then it comes back to us to vote on, and that's what you see here. And lots of these things, you're welcome to look to them in a little bit. We're going to go over the top 20. And but fortunately, it's not as bad as you think it is. But I always like to bring it. I take it home and show it to my wife, and she looks at it. So let me get one of these things. We're going to start off just kind of talk about the budget. And we call it a budget act. And Ron Newcomb, our new guy at Chattahoochee Tech, knows more about the budget probably in their world than I do. But we've learned a lot in the last 2 years, and I hope I can show that. The budget is a session-long process. We have committees that work just on the budget. They'll start the day when they really work year-round. Every Wednesday morning at the Capitol, the big budget committee and their little committee heads, they get together almost every Wednesday morning at 6:30 in the morning. And the chairman of the House committee is a farmer, and he likes to get there early, and they do that. But they work throughout the year because this is an ongoing process and it's very complex. When you look at something like you'll see on that very first page, The state portion of our state budget is around $19.2 billion. And I left my budget documents in my office, because when I left the other night, that night, they're about this thick, and I should have brought them so you can just look at them, but they're detailed. I think that's one thing I learned in the last 2 years, that is a very detail-driven world, especially in the budget. Appropriations is where I want to end up. That's where I've worked to try to get on the appropriations committee next year. Got the wind up kind of ones I want to get on, but you kind of have to work your way into them. It's because it's a prestigious thing, but it's a lot of work. And but our real goal in the legislature is really one thing, and that's the budget and how we spend our money. All the other 200 bills that we passed this year are just side shows to what we do with the budget and how it affects people in the state of Georgia. Just these little things I throw out there. You know, Georgia's 49th in tax burden. And when we're sitting here, we don't believe that, probably, but we are. Alaska is only less in tax burden than we are. And that's the reason in Alaska, if you live there, they pay you to live there. You know, through their oil revenues and things like that. When I learned that, that was very neat. Georgia State University puts out a great little booklet. If you ever want to learn about taxes, in the Physical Research Center, about Georgia's taxes, where they come from, where they go, how we get them, how we spend them. Fascinating reading. This is one of those things I'm sitting around at the Capitol, we just look at, because it tells where the gas tax goes, how it comes to us, where we spend it, in a real short abbreviated form, and I like it a lot. We had a slight increase in the budget this year, and most of it's due to education. You know, we have to fund, or it's our responsibility to fund school growth. Couldn't believe schools were growing. I thought our population was decreasing, but it's not. And most of that funding for us went towards school growth. Also healthcare, teacher retirement, workers' comp, and believe it or not, technology. But the majority of it's in school growth, and which I found neat. The rainy day fund's important in the state of Georgia. It got down to nothing. And I think Governor Deal has put a lot of emphasis on getting our rainy day fund up to $1 billion within the next 3 years. Right now it's at 328, and people say, why do we need extra money in the state? Things happen. And just like in 2008, when we had a dive, we did have a little over $1 billion in state budget. It allowed us, gave us some room and time, so we didn't have to do some drastic things like other states did. It also has a big effect on our bond money. You know, this year's, we don't know yet. I'm sure Ron might know. The governor, I don't know if he's vetoed any of the bond package yet or not. I haven't heard yet. And so that's a big deal, because we did a big bond package this year. Last year's was about $500 million. This year's about $900 something. We're almost $1 billion of bonds. And bonding money in Georgia goes for construction projects, maybe schools, technical colleges, universities, big projects, and some small ones too. Like one that I knew about was thought was real good for us is adding cabins at Rock Eagle at the $2 million in bonds for that. So there's a lot of small things, but bonding being as cheap as it can be is important, and that's one thing, having a good rainy day fund. One thing I was neat, we raised a little bit of money, and some of that raise was in $111 million to give the governor a little cushion to close deals. And you'll see when we talk about some of these other things that's been our goal. During all the things we've done this year, I think you heard comments throughout the session, is what can we do about jobs? What can we do to make sure that whatever we do keeps Georgia one of the top places to come create a business and start a business? I know that's why Caterpillar is here. Some of the things that we did during the session and lock that deal in. We give the governor enough money so that they can spend money they have to make deals, which sounds bad, but it's not, to close these deals. Either be a tax exemption or whatever they need to do. And I feel real good about that. So, any questions on the budget? Just holler them out if you think of any.
What, could you explain what you just said about money to the governor to help him close the Caterpillar deal? What did he actually have to negotiate with him?
I don't know yet. I've not seen the report on what they had to do. I know usually they're going to give them tax exemptions for, especially on jobs and job creation, because it's a mega industry. Gary, you might help me on what all they gave them to, if you remember.
Rick, again, I didn't look at the specifics, but typically what is offered is, of course, there's standard incentives like job tax credits. Certainly there's mechanisms that allow property tax relief. Often there's other incentives thrown in as it relates to site preparations, things such as that. When I was with the railroad, we would even do offerings to offset the cost of the railroad track infrastructure. So typically there'll be some type of relief as it relates to taxes or assistance as it relates to getting the site prepared and putting in the infrastructure to support the site. Again, don't have the numbers to for each one of those areas, but that's what that package is going to consist of based on other projects that we've done within the state.
You know, one thing we did in this tax, and the next one we're going to talk about, is we took away the taxes on energy used in manufacturing. And so in Caterpillars, it's going to be a big energy using business. So they had to pay taxes on that energy. That's one thing we took away. Will be phased out over the next 3 years.
That's just for industry, you're talking?
Yes, people that make things, you know, and maintain them. So that's real important, really, in this region, because, you know, I represent part of the carpet business now. And, you know, energy, as it relates to carpet, is huge. That's really their biggest expense. So that tax breaks, it's going to help them a lot. Because we're one of the only, we are, and Ron, you might tell us, and Ron's with Georgia Power, that we're the only state in the South that did charge taxes on energy used in manufacturing. So that's one of those things that we felt was a barrier. But the biggest news out here is the tax plan that we passed. It's called House Bill 386. That's the second thing there. This one's got the most news. I talked about it yesterday at the Chamber Open House. I talked about it this morning because it's a big bill. It's something we've been working on. I was elected May 11th of 2010. And I started going to meetings regarding tax reform the next week. So tax reform is something that's been very much on the mind of the General Assembly, leadership in industry and trade all across the state. Because we've got to change, we've got to adapt it. And we worked real hard on it. We worked real hard. The last session got to the very end and we had to withdraw our plan because we had faulty data. And which is hard to believe in the world we're in, but we got some bad data that we felt was going to really imperil us in what we were doing. So they came back over the summer, they worked real hard at it, coming with quite a comprehensive bill on tax reform. And I've got just some, you know, it has a few things there, but like I said, it eliminates that the sales tax on energy, changes the marriage exemption, you know, goes from, increases it by $2,000, what we call, everyone used to call the marriage penalty. One thing it's going to do is companies that have a presence, some way or another, to remit sales tax to the state. And this is related to internet sales or e-commerce. We'll have a sales tax holiday that's been out there. We haven't done them in about 4 years, but that's the 2-day thing in October when there'll be no sales tax. We capped retirement income. These are some things that have been controversial. You know, Sonny Perdue, when he passed the senior citizens, or what he called a retirement income tax credit, was going to eventually phase out all taxes on income, on retirement income. We're talking about if you're retired and have a job. We're not talking about that part, but just on retirement income. They've capped it at $65,000 income for single and $130,000 for married. And of course, we don't tax Social Security, so that really gets it up to about $170,000. One of the more interesting parts of it is the title tag fee change. So we all pay a birthday tax when we get our cars. And we go to the tag office and we pay various different prices based on the value of your car. We're doing away with that. And what we're going to do is have a tag fee when you purchase your car. And it's based on its value, sliding scale and all that stuff. It's when you purchase a car, even if you purchase it from me. Now, there's an exemption for family. You won't have to pay it then, but if we're purchasing it, we call casual sales, you will when you go get your title change and get your tag. But it does away with ad valorem tax and sales tax. Now when you go,
Not county.
all of it. All of it. And so it's going to do away with sales tax and ad valorem, period. So we will have a tag fee. It's probably, I don't know what it is, but it's going to do with all those. But you are going to pay it up front. Now those people who like me, keep cars forever, will continue on the old ad valorem system we have right now. But those people who buy a car in 2012, no matter how they do it, will be able the option to go the tag fee route as soon as the governor signs this thing. I think he already has. But that's a very big change. You know, we had to make a commitment, you know, with the tag fee money to make sure we kept counties whole. And there's a very complex, I can show it to you, I don't know if I brought it or not, the actuarial schedule and how we're going to do that. Kind of makes your head spin, but we're going to do it. Yes, sir, Ron.
Does that, when does that go into effect, Rick?
Okay, the initial death is March 1st next year, but you'll be able in 2012, as soon as this is signed and kicks in, to do the tag fee or stay with the old program.
So if I'm gonna buy me a new car, I need to do it before next March?
Yeah, if you want to. I think it's going to be cheaper. I think you look at it straight up on money. Have the tag fee, if you keep a car more than 3 or 4 years, will absolutely be cheaper. If you're a constant every 2-year trader, it might cost you more.
Yeah.
Now, what was you mentioned that there's an option. You said that if you only
For this year.
this year.
For this year only. And then everybody will migrate to that as they buy a new car.
Well, there's an opening there.
No, as you buy a new car, you'll rotate out of it.
So you're gonna keep taxing me on the vehicle that I already own, the way
Yeah.
you've always taxed me?
Right, until you buy a new one, and then you'll rotate out of it.
But even if I buy a used one, it's the same thing, right?
Yes.
From
Right.
individually.
From an individual, yes.
Do you pay that fee up front to the dealership, or do you have to pay the tag?
You pay it at the tag office, because there have been some unscrupulous auto dealers. Yeah.
Did I read where it was 6.5%?
It's 6.5, it's gonna go, what's it, 6.5, goes to 6.75 and 7 over 3 years.
So it's just like a sales tax?
Yeah, it's a tag fee, but that's the end of it. That's a good way to put it.
But
But you're gonna pay it again, ad valorem on that
you're
car
gonna
stuff.
keep making me pay the $135 a year for as long as I keep or whatever the fee is based on the millage rate.
On the car that you currently have, yes.
But you're saying the sales tax goes away too? So the county sales tax?
They will make them whole.
So when I buy a new car, I don't have to pay 6% sales tax anymore. I just pay this
Tag fee,
6%.
6.5.
Call it 7
7,
tag fee,
yeah.
and then I'm done.
When you say make them whole, what does that mean?
Let me, okay, remember though, on your ad valorem, the counties get part of it, the counties get part of the sales tax. This money's coming to the state, and then they're gonna redistribute it back to you. So it's been a good hand-holding thing, and they trust one another. It's been real good.
ACCG's behind.
Oh, absolutely. You know, because I think there's been a lot of just not paying tax on these things. The best one I heard of is like, you sell a car to a used car dealer, and you sign off on the title. He puts the title in his pocket,
Never transferred.
never transfers it. So nothing goes on there. So when you buy it from him, you sign it, so there's no tax, but he charges you the sales tax anyway. He gets to keep that, whatever it is, 7%, 6%, common. And, you know, also what they call roaming car lots, where there are people coming in from other states with putting 2 cars here, 10 cars in a lot, and just selling, curb selling. This will stop that because you're gonna have to title it and then pay a title fee. It's not so much prevalent here because we're sort of in the state, but in the perimeters, that's been a big issue.
Wow.
So that's really the hardest one that's out there, just due to cheating. But one of the neat things is that it does still reinforce some of the film tax credits that are in there. Just a long list of them. That's really a 30% income tax credit that has got the movie people here today in our county. They are taking away their sales tax credit on stuff that they buy. They used to have that, but it's insignificant. The people in that motion picture business agreed to getting rid of that. But this 30% income tax thing has been huge. Economic Development Director can tell you it went from a $200 and some million business 4 years ago. Averaged every year about 180 to $220 million to this past year's $1.4 billion business. I mean, it's just skyrocketed, you know, just brought people here. And I asked the guy the other night when I was talking to one of them, he said California sees that. And so is it going to be a race to the bottom? That's what he and I were talking about. Were we going to cut it more to keep them? That's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But this is going to be the biggest bill that really affects your life. This is tax bill. We think it's good. It's a very pro-growth tax bill, and I think I'm very much 100% behind it. It was real neat to watch in the House, especially where we have a very dynamically different group of people. That even the Democrats who were on the outside of some of these discussions were absolutely for this thing because they see what a good job and what it's going to do for general public in our state. Criminal justice reform's next. And I'll try to start taking less time. I mean, don't take as much time as y'all want. I just got to be in Dalton. I got to leave for Dalton at 5:30. So, okay. Criminal justice reform was something that I'm sure Judge Wigington, he knows more about it than I do, but boy, this is something they've worked very hard on. The bill is extensive. I could dig through it and find it in here. But, you know, it's just one of those things when you become elected, you don't know anything about. I mean, I know we have a jail. I know there's state prisons. I know we lock people up for all sorts of things, but this is something I've had to learn a whole lot about. And it's amazing to know that we in Georgia are #2 in America at locking people up. Because we're mad at them. We want people to pay. And it cost us a little over $1 billion to keep these people up. And that's 6% of the total budget. And just little things, you know, and I think folks have begun to see how this is not trending downward, it's trending upward. And the current way we're doing it, we're going to spend more money. Is that what we want to do? Are there alternatives? And I think this past year really had a group of people to get together and say, how can we address this? What can we do? It really comes out of leadership of the governor's office, or Governor Deal. His background is in law and his family and all, but how can we change this thing? You know, we have 30% recidivism in people that are in prisons right now. And I think, Governor Deal, when he first heard him talk about it, he said, we've got to look and differentiate between people we're mad at, or mad at their behavior, and people that we're afraid of. What's the difference? How are we going to treat them? And so this bill, and it, you know, we met just as, and how they try to do it is if you don't know something, we have meetings. And they have a meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning for anybody that wants to know about this one's 1176. Wendell Willard, who is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and 2 or 3 will be in there to explain it to you. Because this is one of those that was really broad, and we've been hearing about it and seeing the bill for a long time, but they really take time to make sure you know and understand it. Because this is one of those bills that there's people are for parts of it, people are absolutely against parts of it. Depends on what side of that vast law world you're on. In some parts, the judges are for it, some parts, the district attorneys are against it. Some parts, the defense attorneys are for it, and the prosecutors are against it. And it's all this mix, and they have to try to balance it out. But it's really neat. A couple of important things about it that I found interesting is it's going to allow for the electronic monitoring of anybody in probation. They couldn't do that before. Well, they're going to do it now. Gives probation, this bill will give probation and their people more power, which I think everybody wanted. It will increase drug courts and other, what I call behavior courts. If you've never been to a drug court program in Pickens County, that Judge Weaver, she gets a lot of credit for it. But boy, howdy, there's a bunch of people that support that drug court program, and it seems to work. And I think it's worked across the state at really addressing the drug problems within our state. You know, it's going to really create, it's going to modernize, I think, how information's transferred. It's going to really force it. It's going to change how some burglaries are created. And if you want like details on all this, I could sure give it to you. Because, you know, like shoplifting was increased to $500 instead of anything for the certain kind of penalty. I think Alan will probably know more about that.
Misdemeanor goes from 300 to 500,
Yeah.
bad check goes from 500 to 1,500. And if you go into an unoccupied structure, it's a third-degree burglary versus just a plain old burglary, which has a recidivist count that's attached to it.
Oh,
So it's a complex. The one that concerned me, I won't say concerned me, but the one that I thought was interesting was the drugs and how it's going to a weight-based system instead of having a standard drug possession and plain old possession. You now have a standardized weight schedule that goes with it. So you really have to be careful with how it's charged in the field, because if you charge it as something and they come in and plead guilty to it, but it turned out to be something totally different, you know, it creates a little mystery there. But I think that we're looking at the Texas model, and they've done very successful things with it, so it'll be interesting to see that.
It is based on Texas. And so it's been, you know, this was a real learning experience to me. The one thing that's key, I think that we had to feel good about in the very end, is it didn't reduce sentencing for serious felonies. I mean, I think that's what, I think the first day I was in there, that's when they talked about was what it didn't do. Or decriminalize drug and drug possession. It doesn't do those. It just changes how we treat it.
It expands what I think is what you call, or what we on our side of the system call the accountability model. And we look at how can you hold an offender accountable, but at the same time provide them treatment so they don't do it again? Because if you just put them in prison, they're going to come out and reoffend.
Yeah.
So you've got to break that cycle somewhere and provide accountability, and that's what this is looking at doing. And it looks at it, and the thing I was most impressed with what you all did was that everybody talks about drug courts, but it's mental health courts, veterans, all the levels of accountability courts, and packaged them together and provided the funding for them. So
They did. I think it's $11 million.
Very exciting.
They're putting money of the governor's office, puts money in there to fund it. I guess really, to not so much fund the courts, because the courts are almost self-funded, but to provide training and a framework so this thing can expand across the state.
It's just like infrastructure.
It's been, I think everybody's happy about that. One thing that's interesting, you find that stuff you don't want to talk about, but like, and you've seen it happen across the United States, is it removed the statute of limitations on sex crimes. And they've been there, they're under statute of limitations. So if something happened and somebody comes back 14 years later, well, couldn't do anything about it. This removes that, and which I think is one interesting thing. Of course, mandatory reporting of child abuse, that's been strengthened, and who has to report.
It now includes church groups.
Yes, it now does. And so that's a little controversial, but
No, they just weren't codified.
it's not in the code. And then there's some pretty significant penalties for not doing it. But, if you had questions on this, I can hear Alan, that our court people are really looking into it, because it's going to pass. It'll be signed by the governor very quickly, because it's really his thing. So I think it's pretty neat. Let's move on real quick. This is what I call a great bill. House Bill 456, that's the next one underneath there. And I'm trying right now to get on this committee. This is one of those bills I think is great, where we'll, through the legislature and some other folks, get to look at any state agency over a period of a few years and sunset them. It's really gonna put a sunset clause on a lot of things, so we can look at them, are they doing what they're supposed to be doing according to how they were set up? If they're not, do they need to be combined, moved, shut down, put with somebody else? It's a real neat idea. I hope that, I thought we passed it last year and I wrote all these letters to everybody trying to get on it, and I don't know why they didn't return my letter, but, we didn't pass the Senate. This year it did, and it's one of these real neat things we'll be able to look at programs and shut them down. It is tremendously difficult in the House of Representatives and the Senate to stop a program, because you've got money tied to people, tied to lobbying groups, tied to organizations that are gaining part of it, and it's very difficult. This is going to make it a whole lot easier, we're pretty sure, and I look forward to that. But you can't shut down things like that are in code. I mean, you can, but not like the Attorney General's office that are elected. They're kind of protected through the Constitution. One thing I didn't know about is this next one, tax tribunals. I've been audited, a lot of folks have, but never as a business. And our dealings with the Department of Revenue, if I had to tell you how many calls I get besides local issues, which don't count, but number one, Department of Revenue calls, where people have been charged too much, or not been charged, or paperwork's lost, or they're wanting to take their house, or whatever, because they haven't done something with the Department of Revenue. This now sets up a tribunal that you're going to be able to go to straight up as an individual, people who are trained in tax law, with them on one side and you on the other, and work it out. Instead of now, it's pretty much whatever they say goes. And you can take it to Superior Court if you want to, but that's expensive for most people. So we're hoping that the tax tribunal will help solve some of our issues with revenue. Because that is an interesting, big time thing.
Who will sit on the tribunal?
They have to have 8 years of experience to be able to do it in tax and tax law. And there's
CPAs or?
you've got to have.
CPAs?
And an attorney, you have to be an attorney as well.
Yeah, there's will be a group. I'll have to look
It's
that
a
up.
state administrative judge, basically.
Yeah, we'll have to look it up. 'Cause all I remember reading is that they had to have 8 years of experience in tax. Not just a lawyer, but it's got to be tax. And that's the key. Because they got to understand the issue.
And you're going before one judge or a board?
It's a board. It's 3, I think. I'll have to look. Don't hold me to that. I'll have to look and let you know. I'll have to look. I'll find out. Okay. Next one was the most, one we got the most telephone calls on by far, drug testing for TANF. And this one really is a temporary assistance for needy families. This is not a large budget item, but it's really a statement to just start moving toward drug testing on people that get benefits. And this was the first one that they could try to do. In the original legislation that set up TANF at the federal level, it says you could drug test them, but nobody's ever done it. We passed this bill on the House passed it, I think, on a Tuesday. On the next Tuesday, the Obama administration executive ordered no drug testing for any benefits. I mean, that's the battle that we're fighting. And so there's not going to be any until that goes to court, and it will, I'm sure. But this was one of those, and it sounds worse than it is, but this one protected families, or really protected children. Whether for drug testing or not, this one took the approach that if you're an adult asking for money for assistance for needy families, and that's what this is, you have children you're dealing with. So if you're a drug person caught up in this drug world, you're getting a TANF card and you're selling it. And that is common. So this says that if you test positive for drugs, we're not withholding the money from the kid, but you're gonna have to bring somebody in that can pass a drug test. They are gonna get the money. They are gonna be held accountable for the child getting the needed assistance. Now, if that person you bring in fails it, you gotta find somebody who does. But it's not gonna hurt, we feel, won't hurt the kids, but it's really there to just say, no, we're tired of it. We don't want this going on. So it's a very controversial, I mean, it's very Republican, Democrat, personal responsibility sort of bill, and it got very emotional, and they limited the debate to 2.5 hours. And you can watch it online if you like to, but it got pretty emotional. But this is the beginning. I think you'll see we're really going to look at drug testing, qualify for benefits. And most of us think it's a good idea.
How do they distribute money? For example, my grandkids, I mean, it's usually the same. And then, say their parents may have an issue.
Yeah.
And they can't pass the test. But I am concerned about my grandchildren. So if they get benefits, where does the benefits sit?
Benefits going to come to you.
And I'm going to distribute.
You're going to distribute.
I like that.
Well, it is I think most of us do.
Is that an executive order by the White House?
Yes, sir.
That cut it off until such time it goes through the courts?
Right.
What was the reason for cutting it off? Did they say? Do they have to give a reason?
That's an executive order.
And the problem you have is executive orders may or may not be subject to judicial review. So,
But this one will be, because I'm sure, this one's being fought in the courts right now in Florida. And our bill, what they did is they kicked the start date back to 13 to make sure, we changed ours from Florida's. What the Obama administration brought against Florida, we changed it. You kind of try to learn from the other states, and but he put a hold on none.
Why do you think they did that?
Why do I think they did that?
Mhm.
Obama administration?
Yeah.
They don't want to do that.
Why?
I mean, it's a Democrat, like I said earlier, it's a Democrat versus Republican thing. Should we be for personal responsibility or not? And ours is, I'm on the side of, we're giving you benefits, we expect a little bit out of you. I mean, everybody here works pretty much, and, you have to do a certain group of things to get paid. And I think Republicans in general think that benefits are paid.
Mm-hmm.
And so should we demand you to have certain few things to do to get it? I'm on the yes side of that. And I think the Obama administration, they're not. I mean, it's a right. And that's where, I think it's where we differ.
Entitlement mentality.
Entitlement, yeah. But it's a right. And so that's where we really differ. And the guy that did this was in my office. He's from Livonia. And holy cow. I mean, our poor secretary, I said, you got to give her something special when this is over, because the calls of just hatred toward him were just unreal stuff, the people that attacked him. And we're going right by my office. Where's he at? Where's Michael Hart? Down in the hall. But it's one of those things that just kind of sets Georgia apart that we're really trying to get a control on. Because drugs, it's been a big.
They're saying that they're trying to say that that's unconstitutional, but I mean, if you're drug testing somebody for the purpose of arresting them, I can see that that's unconstitutional. But if you're drug testing them so that you don't have to pay them for being a druggie, that just makes perfect sense.
You might not call it, but in the original federal legislation setting up the program, it says at the very end you can do drug testing.
and it was a Clinton administration bill, if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
because it was under the Violence Against Women Act.
Yeah.
And it was set up that way. The other issue you run into that, and one of the things that I've heard batted around a lot is, under the mandated reporting of child abuse, the Department of Human Resources, or Department of Human Services, or whoever they are now, is going to be set up to do this. If they test you and you test positive, then they're mandated reporters, and they know you have care and custody of children, so they're required to report to themselves that in fact you have a positive drug screen in the home, which kicks in the juvenile court, which means you can't refuse to take a drug test anymore. So there's kind of a chain, and I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm for it. But there are all kinds of little nuances like that, because again, under the mandated reporter statute, they were already required to do it. And if you refused, there were consequences for that very thing. So it'll be interesting to see what the courts do with it in Florida.
But it's, we feel very positive. I hope. I like it. Okay, keep on moving. Fetal Pain Act. This is what we call the abortion bill. The pro-life bill that's passed this year, which was really another 2.5 hours. No, this was longer than that. This was 3 hour debate. And by Doug McKillop, who's a representative over in Athens. It's pretty much a party line vote, both the House and the Senate. But this one's one of those, it's a 20-week thing. Up until now, it's been 22 weeks. It's moved back to 20 weeks, based on research that babies can feel pain at, or fetus, whatever you want to call it, at 20 weeks. There were some exceptions brought out that really, I think, the first bill that came through had some flaws. Going to the Senate, they worked on it. Coming back to a conference committee, like it showed on these, really made it a better bill. Because the biggest issue they had during this thing was medically futile or futile. And if, let's say, and there are unfortunately all kinds of terrible things happen, but ones that are medically futile, those that are born without a brain or without internal organs and things like that do happen, it's going to let them go ahead and do that, but it really increased the reporting of it. I think that's one thing people would like to know. That's pretty controversial. I expect the governor will sign that one pretty quick too. Right. Anybody have any questions on that one? Okay, on this next one, False Claims Act. Well, we had this thing called the State False Medicaid Claims Act. So if you were falsely taking money from our state on Medicaid, they could go after you. But if you were falsely taking money from other programs of the state, they had a hard time going after you. Well, they did a very extensive thing for people committing fraud against our state to give them and also individuals are going to be able to take part in this, prosecuting if you find something where they've been able to do, to go after fraud. And I think it's really good. It includes states and schools, like the folks that falsified records in the Atlanta cheating scandal. You notice how that's kind of drug on, they really couldn't do anything with them. This will address that. Falsifying records and other things is going to give them a pathway to go after them. Informants will be paid, which some people don't like. If the Attorney General decided he didn't want to prosecute it, an individual can still bring it on. And instead of them getting 15% or something like that, they could get 30% of the difference. And so it's a pretty neat bill on how that it's going to empower individuals, empower whistleblowers, and also try to reduce fraud, which is one of those hard things to do. And it's all new law. This one was one of those that, a lot of these bills, the new law will be 6 or 7 lines long. This is like 12 pages of brand new law that's going to affect that one. The one that got people wildest just about was metal theft. And if you own a business in Pickens County or in Georgia, you've probably been a victim of metal theft. I didn't know it until this was going on that we have a substation that's owned in Nelson. I believe I don't know if it's one of yours or not, for Georgia Power when they stripped it of all the copper. And copper probably got, I think they estimated $300-something for the copper, and it was like $37,000 to replace it. This is going all over the state. I'm going to tell you 2 stories. One that's a brand new John Deere sit on skid steer thing, they had pictures of the video. Guy brings it in, junk, brand new one. Something that's somebody's yard. Takes it to the recycler. They take it, pay him, I think $112. They crush it within 5 minutes.
What was the machine?
The John Deere. You sit on the skid steer type lawnmower.
Oh, okay.
This is going on all over the state. The best one though is a
Are you
pickup.
truly questions?
Yep, they got a picture of them. And the video, security video, they
That's
can
not
watch
a
it.
smart guy.
Yeah, so
Not much
well,
of
the
a
best
business.
one, you'll love this one on the trucks. Okay, so the guy goes to, the person goes to the used car lot with, and gets a used truck. Takes it to the stops, pulls that used car tag off the back of it, you know, throws some stuff in the seats, drives it to the recycling center. I'm here to turn this truck in. They say, sure, here's $410. They take it, smash it, he leaves. They couldn't find the truck. But they eventually did. It happened here, but this is going on all over the state.
What was he, test driving the truck? He never
That's what he
bought it?
told him. He took it and recycled, got $425. It's unreal. It's absolutely unbelievable.
It's been a big issue around the state, really.
That's terrible.
They're stealing from not only power companies where, you know, if you steal the metal off of different things, I mean, that's how your neutral works in your house. If we start losing our stuff, it doesn't operate properly for us or you, either one. Plus, you know, they're stealing copper out of houses sitting empty and
Yeah.
heat pumps on the side and just everything you can think of.
Yeah, insurance for rural churches had went up 62% because they're not there to be able to, they're stealing the air conditioning units.
I think at the beginning of the year, TDS down there at Nelson called us and said, we had some guys pull a telephone cable down low enough to hook it to a car and just pulled out a whole slew of it. They came back later and did it again. And they wanted to story it because they said there was a guy on one of these medical monitors and his phone service was down until they could get it up again. You know,
Sure.
It's a dangerous thing. And they called back and said, no, don't run that. We don't want people to know how those guys are doing it. So,
Yeah, but it's been prolific. It's been a huge problem. And, you know, 1,500 thefts minimum just this past year. You know, like I said, chicken houses, you know, they go into a chicken house, tie off on just pull it out their truck. It's just unreal. It's things that have happened. But we went through a long process, started last summer on metal theft, bringing people together from the recycling side and insurance, ugly meetings. Because, you know, they want to do one thing, and the insurance, of course, probably wants something over here and over here. But they really had to fight until the last day to get them in the middle. And we passed this bill about 10 o'clock on day 40 because it really took them that long to find common ground that really didn't put the recyclers, who were doing a good job, out of business, but really protected insurance and individuals. And so this bill really does that. You know, they've got, if you take an air conditioning unit now, it's got to be yours. You can't take more than one. Even then, if you take an air conditioning unit, the air conditioning contractor has to sign off and say it came from his house. He just can't go get them now like they used to.
He has to be an HVAC
Yes.
licensed
Yes.
contractor.
Sure does. And so
That's
they
the
really,
way I read it.
well, they have tightened it up. I mean, it's pretty tough. And they've got to take records, they've got to take digital camera pictures of you and your stuff. So that when the sheriff goes to find it, they got a picture of you and that truck full of stuff. And as they empty it, if it's a truck full, they've got to do multiple pictures of it.
Metal
Yeah,
theft is really the new pawn shop investigation. When I was a deputy, we'd go to the pawn shop and search through records and look for stuff. And even when I was leaving, you go to the metals recyclers and check it out. You got something metal going, you can almost pinpoint where it's at and where it's going.
Yeah, they really tighten this thing up. You know, with the sheriff, they've got to register with the sheriff now. It's going to be tough. There's going to be like a secondary, we know, right up front, there's going to be a secondary underground market for this stuff. I mean, it isn't everything. You try to regulate something, that's the way it usually goes. Makes these metal buyers liable civilly. They've not been before, which is where they're real upset about that. I've gotten a stack of faxes 1, 2, 3 days from our 2 hearing. I represent 4 different ones. I think one day I got a stack of faxes that big telling us not to do it. But then there's 3 stages of punishment for them, and the last one being a felony. So if you could say that we're not messing around anymore, because you know this is the 3rd metal theft bill in the last 5 years. The 2 kind of steps didn't work. Well, this one's really a step. This is really tough, which I think will help. You know, but it's really interesting to watch that thing run through. I'm gonna kind of skip a few of these, but I'm talking about this charter school. This is a constitutional amendment. Boy, has it been in the news. I mean, but this is a constitutional amendment to ask, should the state be allowed to create and fund charter schools? A lot of controversy around this subject. You'll see a lot of it before the November election, because it's going to be on there. And people ask me my opinion on it. I guess when I look at anything that relates to schools, and I tell the superintendents who scream at me from all 3 counties that I work in, I'll evaluate anything about a school very simply. What's best for the kids? That doesn't mean what's best for the bureaucracy that surrounds them. What's best for the children? And charter schools is one of those things that, in the big scheme of things, may not ever be anything in Pickens County or Gordon or Murray that I represent. But if you're a little kid in downtown Atlanta, is we as a state going to say, well, that's just the best you're going to get is what you got. And we're not going to give you an opportunity to have anything else. And, for me, I can't buy that, but I don't. And I had some pretty tough conversations with educators about this, but in the end, you got to look what's best for the kids. And I think this is one of those bills that, the reason it happened was the Supreme Court ruled that we couldn't do it, but you can hear a lot of argument that what does the state of Georgia have anything to do with local schools? That's should we? Well, we as taxpayers in the state of Georgia provide 54% of the state budget for education. And so the school board of people are saying, well, that's not irrelevant. Well, we should have a say as legislators and legislators and governors and all in schools. We do the curriculum, we do what they're paid, we do all that now. And to say, well, we're going to shove this one piece off to the side and y'all can't talk about it, that's probably not acceptable. If this were to fail, we'd come back with something else. But I think there's enough people that want to see some alternatives in education. And this, we talked about TANF, the drug testing, is pretty much a Republican Democrat thing. This was not. This is one of those things that it had to have what we call a supermajority to win, which took a lot of Democrats to come over here. And it was very, very even. A lot of Republicans voted against it because of local school pressure. A lot of Democrats voted for it because they see the need in what they represent as urban areas, which I thought was just pretty neat. But you'll see there will be a lot about this in the news in the next year for sure. Let me think here. There's interesting things like Trafficking Study Commission. We live in a little world where we don't have human sex trafficking, I hope, in Pickens County or Murray, but boy, they do in the state of Georgia. And they're really looking at, what it is, trying to stop it. And what can we do? They did a good bill 2 years ago to work on sex trafficking, and this is really let them take a look at it. Let's see what we can do. And especially, it's so much stopping it, but what can we do to care for the guys and girls that are caught up in this thing? And what can we do to help them? And that's what I think 1151 works at. Assisted suicide prevention thing. This is one of those things where we had to have a bill that, this is the Kevorkian bill, what I'd call it, to assist people. Had happened in the state, it happened year before last in Cobb County, and it wasn't illegal for this guy to do that. It's going to be now to assist somebody. But this doesn't have anything to do with medical, pain relief, or any of that kind of business like that. If you want me to bore you, I can talk about equalization, reformulation. This is about schools and school funding, pages of stuff. This was very interesting thing, but I'll kind of skip that one. But this is an attempt to equalize funding across the state of Georgia. Georgia's Constitution says we got to provide all kids an equal and equitable education, and we're a wealthy county. There's unwealthy counties. By golly, this one's going to make the South Georgia counties increase their millage so that they have got more skin in the game. They all voted against it. I wonder why. But we voted for it. There were more of us than them, and so it passed. But it's one of those real neat ones. We jumped down through there. House Bill 868. I think, have you ever heard Governor Deal talk for any length of time? It's about how can we make Georgia more competitive. You know, we want people to move here. They work day and night through all the different agencies they have. Focus, how can we bring other businesses here? You know, how can we train them appropriately? How can we, all this stuff wrapped up into one, so we have a great package. This is one part of it. These are tax credits. Like I said, we're in the top 5 of being business friendly right now. This bill was big time chamber education support. It helps new and existing businesses, which I like a lot. Adds job tax credits. You know, Tom Graves did a great bill a few years ago on jobs bill. It's a tax credit for jobs. It added biomedical manufacturing, manufacturers of alternative energy, military contractors. You know, if you make something in Georgia and you ship it to the Savannah port, you get a little tax credit, or even vice versa. So it's really things to encourage growth in Georgia. But I think it's one of those real neat ones. And they get complex, but I like this one. This was a good one. Sexual Registry Enhancement Act. I don't have a lot down there, but that's sexual offender. And this to enhance the interchange of information between everybody. I'll jump to open meetings. Very controversial. I'm going to listen to Sam Olens tonight and Dalton talk about this. You know, generally everybody says it's a good thing. There are some specific points that people are arguing about on open records and open meetings especially. The Department of Economic Development, greatest thing that ever happened, because it's going to allow them to keep the deals that they make, trying to make them from other people, from reading. That's a good thing, because they don't need to be telling everything they're doing. It's been a major rewrite by the Attorney General. I think the old legislator that sits one beside me goes, Ricky, this is one of them that this is why we get to come down here every year, because there's some of this ain't going to work. But generally, the big parts of it will, but some parts of it might not. Alan was shaking his head. There's some issues in there about people meeting and not being able to go to public meetings together as elected officials. There's some, you know, it's interesting. Go
It's
ahead.
gonna get more and more interesting, I think, with this multi-man commission.
Yeah. Ow. Okay, but open meetings, and plus it's gonna change, you know, there's a little bit of controversy about, can you access e-records? You know, that's electronic records from organizations and how they're gonna do it. But Attorney General, very confident that this was the right thing to do.
And it needed modernization.
Yeah.
It really needed.
And it's cheaper, you know, instead of charging you a quarter a page, that's gonna be 10 cents a page. All kinds of little interesting things like that. The Garnishment Act, see, you learn so much when you're down there. You know, due to Supreme Court ruling, if where you're garnishing somebody's pay in your business, well, according to Supreme Court, now you have to hire a lawyer to do it.
Just
In
to sign
2000.
it.
It's saying, well, not now. Now, this takes away the legal side of it, and you can go back to the way you were doing it. You don't have to have a lawyer, which I thought all the lawyers down there would just jump up on the table and scream, but no, they didn't want to do it. But they were making money off of it. And so it's one of those neat little things. I'm trying to move quickly. Got just a couple more. The Small Business Assistance Act. You know, I know the technical colleges wanted this very much. Agriculture, but you know, the Board of Regents wanted this. A lot of them did it because it increased no bid contracts from $5,000 to $25,000. On the first run at this at the General Assembly, they counted everybody's noses, were they for it or against it, and it lost. So they had to go back and dilly-dally with it a little bit to change it. This is straight up from the governor's office. It hit a roadblock in the House. So they had to go back and change some things to make everybody a little bit more happy. And, but this allow for faster movement on certain perishable purchases, or maybe not, or a deal that they run into. It's just cost of doing business, and it seems all right. DOAS, that's the Department of Administrative Services, will be carefully watching this. They got to report back to us on how this is working, how it's not working. And I think that's one of the additional parts. The Vicious Dog Act was important. Alan's in this business can tell you that how we dealt with dog bites was a hodgepodge of little bitty bits and pieces of bills. This really pulled it all together by a veterinarian named Gene Maddox in South Georgia. A kid in his community was killed by a dog, had been claimed a vicious dog. Everybody in the community knew it. The sheriff couldn't do anything about it. And so this gives a way to take care of it. And you know, it's pretty tough. You know, when you have a dog that punctures your skin, it's going to be a dangerous dog. And now, and that can happen once. If it happens twice, it can be determined a vicious dog. Vicious dogs have to be behind a fence. They have to be identified. The vicious dog has to have a microchip, and you have to have insurance to keep that dog. And if that dog were to do, again, another bite, they can take it out. And so it's pretty tough. There's also some civil penalties that go along with this. And also a felon cannot have a vicious dog. Well, which I said, well, that didn't make any sense to me at all. What do drug dealers keep? Vicious dogs. And so it's going to really stop that. I didn't thought about it, but that's how they protect their places with some of these dogs. And so that's really going to stop that, which is pretty big. And lastly, the top 20 was zero-based budgeting, which is one of those neat things that, you know, when I started messing with this business a couple of years ago, that I thought needed to be done. The Department of Agriculture is doing it this year right now. 10% of all the state agencies are going to do it, including the Board of Regents, which we're very happy about. And but which was very good. And that's a really good bill. But you know, we had some unusual ones. Do you know it's against the law to point a laser at a policeman? It is now, because a lot of guns have laser sights.
You might get shot doing that.
That's right. And we passed a law to let children with terminal illnesses hunt. It was against the law. We got crazy stuff. You know, now poor pharmacists are going to have all their prescriptions written on security paper that has to be because of all this drug problem we're having on prescription drugs. And you have a certain number of prescriptions can be filled by a person of a scheduled drug. You know, it goes on and on. You know, we're going to help municipal court judges over cases. A person's charged with transactions in drug-related objects will now be able to be held by municipal court instead of having to go to that. But it goes on, and you know, about errors of property, but we do a lot of things. We passed the least number of bills, I don't know if I said that at the beginning, that have ever been passed this past year. It was a plan to do that, to not let a lot of bills come to the floor, either the House or the Senate, that really didn't do anything for Georgians. I remember being, back in January, we had a meeting and it was just said, when you come to rules, and what rules is in our world down there is you gotta go to a committee or a committee chairman that gets passed out of a committee. When you go to that rules chairman, he's gonna ask you one question, and you better be able to answer is, how does this bill affect Georgians? You gotta be able to tell them. And I think that really stopped a lot of stuff. And you know, they put in 1,900 bills, were entered 200, and I think 11 passed. That's it. So that was, I think we're all real proud of that we really kind of hummed it in a little bit. And I think you'll even see it again next year. We'll kind of even crunch it down a little bit harder. It makes it hard, I mean, because you got things you want to get past, and there's just not enough room in the pipeline for you sometimes. And your little pet project, you know, We helped a community up in Gilmer County with a little bill this past year, but, you know, sometimes those get hung up just trying to get them through. And that's been a real important thing to do as little as we can. And I think that's what Georgians want to see us do. But I'll answer any questions.
I might say right now that this is designed to be around an hour. We're running a little over, but, you know, if anybody needs to go ahead and go. But if you want to stick around and ask questions, we'll certainly do that.
Well, before everybody disappears, I'm gonna say, Rick, I think it's a wonderful idea to have this and to make yourself available and to go over the top 20 and the interesting ones. Thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you. We welcome you to our community, being the president of our college.
Thank you.
That's what we need.
Thank you, sir.
But hopefully, we'll just close it up then, is that I gave you my card, you know, and you'll notice on my card's my home telephone number. Call me. I mean, that's what people do. You know, I get home at night and I listen to all the messages and try to call them back the next day. So don't be afraid to call. I mean, and that's how we learn things. I was at a meeting this morning, and these are all the things I've got to find out on the school board. You know, just that they say there's a law against this. Well, I can't believe it. We would be so foolish in the state of Georgia to have a law that did that, but we find out stuff. And I spent about an hour on the phone yesterday on two different issues for people, just trying to figure things out. So I did that for 30 years as a county agent. It's kind of fun to learn all that. And the more you do in this business, the more you learn, and a little bit more effective you are. So, but I'd appreciate any calls or comments or ideas for things we can do. What's what we need to know. Enjoy.
I'll testify, he does return his phone calls. You know, he's pretty good about it, actually. If you give him a call, he'll call you back.
You keep that openness and responsiveness your entire career.
Pardon me, I'm sorry.
Keep it your entire career, that responsiveness.
Oh, well, yeah, that's just habit. I mean, and also, now these little black pens
Yeah.
are not provided by the state of Georgia.
must
By
be
Ricky
good.
Jasperse, me. And I was asking about that as I got here this morning. The state giving away pens? I said, Lord, no. But just for us, you know. But I appreciate y'all taking time to come today.